Thank you, Madam President, and good morning to colleague lawyers, and thank you for welcoming me into your offices. We thank Prof for the background he has given to us on COVID-19 and whether contracts can be frustrated or we can apply clauses of force majeure. I'm going to talk from an in-house counsel's point of view. With the outbreak of COVID-19 and the WHO declaring it as a pandemic, we have noticed some impacts on businesses. And these impacts, some of which are delays in supplies to companies, that is, where you have procured for goods and services by virtue of contracts we've entered into with third parties. Delay or suspension in performance of some of these delivery obligations. Travel restrictions, both external and internal, making it impossible for service providers to deliver on their obligations. We have employment implications. We have statutory and regulatory implications, as well as for us in the banks, delays in payments of loans and honoring of some financial obligations generally. As in-house, almost all contracts we entered in with other parties are documented, they are written, no oral contracts. An oral contract would be maybe a contract that would be just for a week with low value. But most of our contracts are written and the force majeure clauses are indicated in the contracts. And it's important that we look at the wording of our force majeure clauses. These clauses are normally boilerplates, and then they list events that we think will be force majeure. So if you want to, with COVID-19, assuming you want to rely on a force majeure clause, then you have to look at the scope of the clause you have in the agreement. And then secondly, like Prof. Amuzu said, non-performance should be circumstances beyond the control of the other party. And that no reasonable steps could be taken to avoid or mitigate the supervening events or its consequences. And before you can rely on force majeure, there is a condition precedent. You have to comply with what we have stated in the notice clause. You cannot just bring a surprise on the other party to say, I'm evoking a force majeure situation. For instance, when there was restriction on movement, we had two of our service providers calling on us to let us know that they are manufacturers. They cannot print documents for us because their workers cannot come to work. So they want to be out of the contract. But after discussions with them, we agree that, look, the restriction is for a specific period. It does not frustrate the entire contract that we have a 3-year contract with you. So we have some stock whilst we look at the restriction period, and we'll suspend the contract for a while and then get back to it. So that contract, we have not terminated, or neither party had applied, had decided to say, I'm out of it. We have suspended, but have now resumed because thankfully restrictions have been lifted. Also, we have employment implications with COVID. Obviously, a lot of employers are concerned in that you have to put in place new working arrangements. You are looking at the protocols for healthy and safe workplaces. You cannot have people working from their workstations all clustered in one room. So what do? As an employer, you definitely have to put in place new working arrangements. You need to let people take their annual leave. If they exhaust their annual leave, you have to let them go on compulsory leave. But the annual leave is with pay. Compulsory leave too, you have to talk about it. We have to let people work from home. And as much as possible, there is rotational working in some workplaces. Also, our regulators have made us evoke our business continuity plans. And in most contracts for GCB, in most of our contracts with third-party service providers, we have clauses for business continuity or disaster recovery, in the sense that we are thinking that things could happen to prevent you from delivering on your contracts. But should it happen, what can you do? Put in place a business continuity plan and share with us. So for instance, as we were in lockdown, most of our service providers were still working because they were working remotely for us, and those who had to bring lean staff on board brought lean staff on board. Also, we have issues where, because of COVID, we are a bank. We have given loans out to a lot of our customers. We are going to have repayment issues. What do? You know, in loan agreements, you don't have force majeure clauses. It is not there. We rather have material adverse change clauses, but we sparingly evoke such clauses. But the best thing we are doing now is to ensure we meet our customers one-on-one, it's case by case, to see if we can suspend payment of both principal and interest, give them more time to pay, or restructure the entire facility. For instance, people in the aviation industry, how are you going to give them more time to pay? You need to just look at it and restructure the entire facility. People in the hospitality industry, we don't know when COVID will be off. For us to say, we are giving you a 3-month period to start repayment, we'll take all those things into consideration to restructure the facilities. Also, we have investors and shareholders that are looking up to receiving dividends this year. With COVID, regulators have made announcements. The banks should not declare and pay dividends unless with the express permission of the regulator. Because the regulator is thinking, should you pay out money at this time and the pandemic travel beyond what we were thinking of? What happens to your capital? It erodes, so you cannot do that. So we are hiding under the regulatory directive not to make payments. But for staff, again, training arrangements and training programs have been rescheduled, in that now most of the training will be online, if possible. And we can have meetings. If it's going to be a training with a group of people, we have the Zoom meetings to do the training. As regards remuneration, for now, every employer is paying the staff. But should COVID travel beyond what we expect, definitely employers will have to engage the union to negotiate on salaries. It will mean we have to think of coming down on our salaries. And it's going to be, I'm sure, organization to organization. But as we speak, it's something that is agitating the mind of every employer, and we have to start looking at how we deal with that. For those who are on fixed-term contracts, once their contracts come to an end, there is no need to re-engage them because their contracts have come to an end. Maybe after COVID, if we need their expertise and skills, we can re-engage them. So some of the contracts will be suspended, some will come to an end once their tenure is done. And then we have to think about the possibility of laying off contracts and temporary staff. If we don't need them, this is not a time for us to keep them on in case COVID continues. We also have to pay social security contributions. But if inflows are not coming, and I'm talking generally about for businesses, if inflows are not coming through, we need to get in touch with SNET and request for delay or time to make payments, because for the Social Security Act, by the 14th of the following month, whether you have paid salaries or not, you need to pay Social Security. So we need to get in touch with them to let them know that these are the challenges with COVID. So basically speaking, from an in-house point of view, that is what is happening. But it is important that for all our force majeure clauses, we make it very wide to include pandemics if we don't have to include pandemics, so that we can bring COVID under pandemics. And then we must all have business continuity clauses to enable us evoke business continuity should there be a situation where the contract has to be suspended, or parties are thinking that they cannot perform. But once you have your business continuity clauses in the contract, you should be able to at least perform in a sort of way. And then finally, I would say that it's early days yet with COVID. So we are yet to have third parties running across to say contracts have been frustrated, or they want to evoke the force majeure clause. But everything would depend on the wording of the force majeure clause, and then looking at the doctrine of frustration. Thank you.